Another word that I think we just don't have as much understanding of what it really is and can be kind of judged from the scientific lens is, again, sort of this like spiritual new agey area of life is alchemy.
Hmm.
And I love how you bring nature into the understanding of this. Again, it really grounds it. And so if somebody's just like just learning alchemy 101, what is fundamentally that process?
Mhm. So, alchemy, in its most fundamental kind of definitions, is the process of transformation, but also the process of raising vibration. So, how to take something from its raw state where it has impurities and it's maybe corrupted or it's not in its ideal form, and then how to take that through a series of steps, alchemical, but also scientific, if you will, steps, very specific procedures that ultimately purify it and refine it and bring it to a more perfected form. So, for example, if we want to go and make a herbal remedy, you go out and you gather the herbs from nature, and they're in their raw form. They're not yet in the like at the purest way in which we can consume them. So we have to take them from nature and take them through a series of steps in a lab and break it down, let the plant die, if you will, let it dry out. Take that, then maybe we extract, like a tea is an extraction, for example, or an essential oil is another kind of extraction of that plant, and then herbal remedies where they're in the tinctures. There's another extraction. Homeopathic kind of remedies are another extraction. So these are different like physical processes that we can do that will extract the pure essences of the plant while discarding the impurities or the parts of it that are not quite conducive to our well-being. But like, for example, distilling the spirit or the alcohol, making the essential oil, making the homeopathic or the supplement like the salts. These are all like one essential out of the whole plant, but there's actually three essentials, so they can each become a different branch. But in alchemy, you'd actually bring them all back together, right? So you'd perfect the form back to where all the essentials come back together, and they're in this highest sort of elevated, pure vibrational state that when you partake of that, it works on all levels. Like it works with the homeopathic, it works with the essential oil, it works with the herbal remedy, it works at all levels. So there are 7 stages in the traditional kind of way of looking at alchemy, and each one of those is when you're going through it at a personal level, because we also go through personal transformation. We will feel very uncomfortable through different stages of the alchemy because some of it's the breakdown and some of it's the like disillusion where you have a lot of emotion come up, and some of it's like trying to find clarity, but you got to pick out the pieces of and discern. And then you come to a place where you feel good again. And it's like, okay, we've gone through the transformation and now we're here, but you're not actually quite fully there, but you're feeling good again. And it's very easy to step back into a comfort zone and just say, okay, I'm good now. I don't, I've been through the ringer and now I'm good. And they sort of stop the process about midway through the alchemical transformation. To go the final stages, you have to really participate with it. You have to really continue to keep the fire under you, if you will, so that you continue to improve and refine and keep digging in deeper and finding those subtle places where the ego still has its attachments and the weeds kind of have their roots, and you keep pulling them out until you finally kind of break through into the ego is not involved anymore. I mean, you still know who you are, but the ego doesn't have so much attachment. It's like it's surrendered. And then we can move to a higher level of just, I'm here to be a vessel and I have a unique purpose and a unique way of delivering that essence, if you will, but it's not about the ego anymore.
It's so fascinating to me, just the process of transformation, both our inner alchemical journey, of becoming more of our true self, of knowing ourself, and the bountiful examples in nature where the origination of something looks nothing like, yet it's encoded within what it started from. Obviously, a great example is just seeds, right? Or an acorn that becomes a big tree. doesn't look anything like each other, but the potential lies dormant within it. If you just got like plopped down onto Earth and you held those two things and you knew nothing and you said that is going to come from this, be the most crazy thing ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that process of transformation, how something and this emergent phenomena arises. I'd love your analogy, if you want, from the caterpillar to the butterfly, which is obviously a cliche, but I love how you break down the 7 stages of the
Mm-hmm.
alchemical
Sure.
process, because that can be applied to viewing our own journey as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. So in my book, The Game Changers, Social Alchemists in the 21st Century, I do this analogy of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly and aligning the metamorphosis stages with the alchemical stages. So the first is like you have the caterpillar, it's feeding off of the leaves and the fat of the land, and it's very earthbound. And all it's really doing is feeding, it's just kind of consuming resources and getting fat. And then at some point, there's like this little timer that goes off inside of its DNA, and it says, okay, it's time for a nap. And it goes and it spins itself a chrysalis or the cocoon, and it kind of settles in for this nap. And that's the stage where it goes into the first alchemical stage, where in alchemy we call it calcination, but really which means burning it to ash. But here in this case with the caterpillar, it's not a burning, but it's a dissolving, where all of the old form of the caterpillar breaks down. So once it's in its chrysalis, if you were to at some point go and like cut it open and look, you would not see anything that resembles a caterpillar. You'd just see a soupy, gooey mess, because the whole structure has broken down. So that's the first stage. And then we have the dissolution stage, which is this dissolving. And so all the cells kind of become dissolved into this mix, if you will. And the DNA, meanwhile, is putting out a new signal. There's a new type of cell that starts getting created, and it's called the imaginal cells in the metamorphosis process. And these imaginal cells have the blueprints, if you will, for becoming the color of the wing or the antenna or the structure of the wings. And
aptly named, whoever
yes,
chose the names for those cells.
They're mad. They have a greater
They're
imagination.
imaginating,
Yeah. And what happens is there's like a bit of a battle that kind of happens inside that chrysalis with the old cells, thinking that these new cells that are coming in are the enemy. They think it's a virus because, wait, we're breaking down, everything's breaking down. And with the immune cells of the old caterpillar start to attack the new cells that are coming in. And so this dissolution stage is very like confusing, if you will. So when we're going through that, we feel a lot of emotion, a lot of confusion. We might actually be at war with ourselves over that process. But as the caterpillar or the butterfly metamorphosis starts to continue, the imaginal cells start to find strength in numbers. They start to kind of combine together. And in that, they're able to fend off, the attacks that are coming. And then soon as there's enough of them that start gathering in numbers, they start realizing, okay, now we can start to diversify. You can be, a digestive cell. I can be a color cell, and so forth. And they start to diversify. And the very, very beginnings of a new structure starts to form. This is what we would compare to like the separation stage, where we're starting to kind of divvy out so that we don't all have to do everything and be everything. We can have our unique roles and we can serve a greater whole and a greater function. And as that continues to progress and the new structure of the butterfly starts to form, we move forward into the conjunction stage, which is, okay, now there's a coming together, because those old cells can still be purposeful. They can align with a new structure. And so the old cells sort of have this choice. Well, we can either go over there because something's working over there, and we can like take our skill sets and whatnot, because a digestive cell can still be a digestive cell, for example, and we just have to align with a new structure. And if they don't, then they end up becoming obsolete and dying off. So there's that sort of separation, and then this conjunction where all of the cells start to come together into this new form. And that new form then starts to make it clear what is this new thing that's emerging out of the soupy mess. And then as the old cells all die off, right, there's this fermentation, which is kind of like the death of the old, the final death of the old. And everything else that makes it past that fermentation is meant to be part of this new structure. It's part of the essential form, the essential aspects of it. And then there's a stage where we go into what's called distillation. So the end of the fermentation stage in alchemy, they talk about the peacock's tail, where there's this like yellow rainbowy film that comes in, and there's all this color that comes in, and there's this light that comes in. It's like this kind of epiphany at the end of the dark night, if you will. We all go through that dark night of the soul, but when you get to the other side of it, there is this epiphany of who am I, and all this light that we start to see. And in the caterpillar, it's kind of like as the chrysalis starts to break open and the light starts coming in, and the butterfly that's emerging starts to move towards the light, but it still has to go through a process, and it's actually having to struggle to get out of the chrysalis. Now, if you were to come along and say, oh, that poor little butterfly, let me help it, and you open up the chrysalis and bring it out, it would not be strong enough to fly. And it would have a very short and boring life because it wouldn't be able to do what it's meant to do. So we can't actually rush that stage. It has to go through the struggle. And in that struggle, in alchemy, we would call it a distillation. You're going through many cycles of elevating and accessing more of the spirit of the higher frequency energies, and then recondensing it back into the physical. And we go through like 7 cycles of this in alchemy. They call it the 7 eagles flying, where there's this distillation of elevating and then recondensing and elevating, like kind of sublimating and recondensing. And in the Emerald Tablet, he says it ascends from earth to heaven and again descends to earth, and thereby it revives the powers of the superiors and the inferiors and kind of brings them together into this sort of perfect union, if you will. So this is the distillation stage, that struggle getting out of the chrysalis. And I think humanity's kind of going through that right now. We're sort of in the final stages of these, like the fermentation, and we're struggling to get out, to break out of the chrysalis. There's a new paradigm that's really emerging, and we're starting to see it, but we gotta, it's not quite there yet to be implemented fully. And even then, there's another stage where once the caterpillar or the butterfly fully gets out of the chrysalis and it's done, okay, it's free, it needs to dry off. It needs a little bit of a rest before it can then take flight. And when it finally takes flight is like the final stage of alchemy, which is the coagulation, where it's crystallized. It's in its new perfected form, and it can go and bring its beauty and its, joy to the world, if you will.
So many parallels in terms of that process, which was very detailed, by the way. I love that.
Well, no one can ever tell me that I'm not detailed. I'm thorough, if nothing else.
But so many through lines to our own personal growth and transformation process,
Exactly.
right? Both from the perspective of the physical, but then also the mental and the emotional, and how those bodies evolve over time and the subtle.
Yeah. And I think it applies also to us individually, and you can see where you are in those alchemical stages as you kind of look at them. And I think that's why alchemy is such a great roadmap, if you will, to our transformational process. And to see when you're at the midpoint, like, oh, there's more to do, right? So that I don't give up and just sort of relax and then slide backwards and have to start it all over again. It's like I can just keep it moving forward and keep gaining ground, but it's going to require more will and more discipline, if you will, more patience as well, and that letting go of the ego. But I also see that humanity as a collective is going through this alchemy, and alchemy is this transformational process is just, it's part of nature in the universe. It's just a universal flow that happens. Even stars go through alchemy, right? As they go from just sort of plasma of particles to coalescing to then, creating and generating light to then at some point becoming a supernova. They're going through their own alchemy. The formation of galaxies is an alchemical process. So alchemy is something that happens universally, from the smallest of structures all the way up to the largest of structures. And so I love how alchemy parallels with quantum physics as well. And the more I looked into alchemy, the more I saw actually the alchemists, their attitude was very quantum. Everything is connected. It all matters, right? I can't separate myself from what I'm experimenting on. I have to take all of these things into account because they all matter and we're all connected. And and they brought together the sort of non-physical and the physical working together into the alchemical process.
Think it breathes so much compassion into understanding our current part of the process we're in our own life. When we're growing or we're going through different changes, where it's maybe that coagulation or fermentation process internally, or it's like a dark night of the soul or whatever you want to call it, where we like to project our present moment experience onto the eternity of the rest of our life,
Mm.
without honoring and just reflecting on how we're in a certain phase of a process that is unfolding in a larger cycle that is ultimately all for a beautiful purpose. So, what comes to mind when you think about how this can bring some more compassion into understanding what kind of part of the process we're internally in?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to know not only who am I and what am I, but where am I, right? Where am I at right now? And in what stage am I in? And when you can relate to the various stages, one, it lets you know, okay, this is, yeah, it's part of a process and I'm in the mix, I'm in the alchemy. And the negative of that is like, it's not comfortable. The positive of that is that transformation's happening and it's going to lead to something better if you participate with it rather than resist it. And so the more you can be compassionate towards yourself rather than beating yourself up about the fact that you're going through change right now, you can be like, well, this is actually, I'm in the alchemy. But when I know what these stages of the alchemical process are and I know where I am in that process, then I can know what's next. And if I know what's next and then what comes down the line from there, then I can be like, okay, what do I need to do to get from here to there, right? How can I keep moving forward through the alchemical process rather than getting stuck in it because I'm resisting it too much, right? Or I'm beating myself up about it, or I'm wondering why this is all happening to me. It's like the universe is trying to help you grow and evolve and transform so that you can really, achieve your greater beauty in life and your greater purpose in life. And so it's like we have to take that more empowered approach and become the alchemist of your own life rather than just sort of being the passenger and letting it happen to you. Because if you just let it happen to you and you think of yourself as a victim to life, then you're not really going to get all the way through it, right? It's only when you take your power back and realize, oh, I can participate with this, I can harness this energy of change, and I can, be more intentional with how I direct it. Then you're going to start making really great strides in your life and breaking through.
Yeah, we have such a it's like an Instacart, Uber Eats mentality for our own growth where we want it instantly, and I do believe that we can open ourselves up and have spontaneous remissions for people experiencing disease and have big shifts in small periods of time. But it also is important to reflect on the purpose each part of the cycle and process plays, because like one of the last phases before the butterfly is born, you were mentioning how that struggle was necessary. And if somebody came in and helped it at that particular time, it would not have developed the strength necessary for it to flourish into its full potential. And I think about how in my own personal journey, and I'm sure in yours and everybody who's listening, there were previous struggles in our life that we were going through where if somebody came and helped us, probably like we have wanted to in the moment, we would not have developed the faculties and the strength necessary for whatever is coming next in our life. And so struggle is a privilege in that aspect.
100%. And, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius put it that the obstacle is the way.
Hmm.
That, by taking those obstacles and those struggles head on, rather than trying to avoid them or shortcut them or run away from them, by taking it head on, you do become stronger. And in meeting the challenges of life, you discover resources and capabilities within yourself that you would have never discovered otherwise. You would have never known that you were capable of it. You would have never even known that you had that gift or that ability had it not been for the challenge. And then sometimes the challenge is just is forcing you to rise above. And in that push, they say, what is it? Necessity is the generator of all innovation. We reinvent and we become something greater than what we were before. So I agree with you that there is sort of this cultural mindset in our modern day that's so used to everything being done at the push of a button that we should also be able to have that magic pill or that, magic bullet that just is, or the one size fits all that's just going to be, this is the thing that's going to solve all my problems. But it's not that simple. We're not that simple. We're very complex, multifaceted, multidimensional beings, and we have much greater capacity, much greater potential than what we're currently manifesting. And the universe is trying to get us, in spirit, it's trying to push us in some way to evolve towards what it is we have the potential to become. And we have a much greater purpose to fulfill. And I believe that anyways, that there is purpose to it all. And we're going to be far better off getting to that place in our life where we're ready to work with it and put in the effort and have some discipline and be consistent and not try to take the shortcut road or like step around and bypass things. Because when you bypass, you're cheating yourself of foundational strengths and capabilities that you need ultimately to serve you when you're getting into fulfilling your greater purpose.